For every one great wrestling character created, there are 10 characters that completely flop. Today I'm going to talk about the biggest character flops in wrestling history. I posted something on Facebook and Twitter asking people for their input and their thoughts, and I got tons of names here. More names than I can count and I can talk about in one sitting. There are just so many people, so many bad characters and gimmicks in the history of the wrestling business. You had trash men. You had guys pretending to be Spider-Man. You had characters like Max Moon with the goofy costume. You had Damien Demento, who knows what he was about. There were just so many guys out there. You were wondering what was the company thinking, or what was the guy behind the character thinking, coming up with this idea. I mean, there were just so many bad ones, and most of the time it was the company coming up with a bad idea. I mean, that's what it boils down to. So let's talk about some of the more notable and more infamous character flops in wrestling history. Starting off with Kerwin White. And the thing about Kerwin White is I actually liked the character a little bit. I thought it was kind of cool. I liked the music, and it was just something different for Chavo Guerrero to do. He wasn't really doing much at the time. And I think a lot of the flopping had to just do with the fact that Eddie Guerrero died and they dropped the character at that point. But maybe it could have lasted for a while. I mean, it had lower card written all over it. I mean, it wasn't going to go very far, but I personally was entertained by it for a little while, at least. The Widowmaker. Barry Windham was a great wrestler in his heyday. He had a great run as part of the Four Horsemen in WCW and the NWA. He goes to WWE and they start calling him the Widowmaker. And he comes back to the WWE several years later and they make him the Stalker. Why? Just terrible ideas, and Barry Windham had two very disappointing runs in WWE, first as the Widowmaker and then as the Stalker. Just bad ideas from the get-go, and what were you thinking? Why can't he just be Barry Windham? Why can't he just go out there and be himself? Never understood that. And here's a guy that did have some success in WCW, Alex Wright. He was a cruiserweight superstar in WCW for several years, and then they decided to repackage him as Berlin. And this lasted, 2 or 3 months, and then he was back to being Alex Wright. Don't understand what they were thinking here. The problem is that everybody knew it was Alex Wright. I mean, the WCW couldn't even get away with pretending that he was somebody else. Everybody knew it was Alex Wright, and it was just a waste of time. And there have been some career-killing gimmicks over the years. And when you think of gimmicks that ruined a guy's career, you think of Terry Taylor and the Red Rooster gimmick. It's bad enough that they gave him that name, but then when they started having him come out with the hairstyle, with the rooster haircut, I mean, there's no way you could take a guy like that seriously. And Terry Taylor never really recovered after that, which was unfortunate because he was a talented wrestler, but they gave him one of the stupidest gimmicks of all time. And speaking of gimmicks that were really stupid, Beaver Cleavage. This was during the Attitude Era, and some people say that there's nothing wrong with the Attitude Era. They could do no wrong, but this was a gimmick that completely flopped. It was just beyond stupid, and it lasted literally 2 or 3 weeks, and then the guy was back to being Headbanger Mosh again. So, I mean, that was the end of it. And here's a gimmick that I don't even think made it to television. If it did, it was for 1 or 2 matches only. I'm talking about Kazarni. This was around the end of 2008, early 2009. There were these little vignettes for Kazarni, and it never really went anywhere. And I mean, it was just a weird gimmick because it might have worked in the 1980s or 90s, but in 2008, 2009, it just didn't fit in. And Kenzo Suzuki. This is another character that was definitely in the wrong era. I mean, it felt like a 1980s mid-card heel foreigner character, and you have him in 2004, 2005, it just didn't fit at all. It was just a very dated character and, boring character for that matter. Vladimir Kozlov, another foreigner character, and, foreigner characters used to be big in the 80s and 90s. The problem is that Kozlov was not very interesting as a character, and he loved double E. I mean, that was the really only entertaining thing he ever said. And then they did put him in a main event match against Triple H, and it bombed on pay-per-view. It was a terrible match, really bad match. And, he just floundered around on the Raw roster for a while. At one point he was teaming with Santino, and, the character never went anywhere. Speaking of a character that never went anywhere, Mordecai. This was an interesting character, dressed in all white and kind of like the anti-Undertaker or something. I guess they were going to have him feud with the Undertaker, but he literally had one pay-per-view match, and then WWE just decided to drop the character, and that was the end of it. So definitely one of the biggest flops of all time when you only have one match and the company decides to get rid of you. And here's a character that the company would not give up on, despite the fact that it was not working. And I'm talking about Glacier in the late 90s in WCW during the Monday Night Wars. WCW created this Mortal Kombat-like character, and the problem is that nobody cared about him. He would come out, he had a really cool entrance with all the laser lights and everything, but when the bell rang, the crowd was dead silent. They did not care about this guy at all. And the thing is, WCW kept pushing him week after week after week, and they did it for several years, and he never caught on. And, WCW, that was one of the problems with them. They didn't know when something was not working to just give up on it. WWE will push something, if it doesn't work, they'll drop it. But WCW, something doesn't work, they just keep shoving it down your throats, and they refuse to give up on it and just let it go. Talk about ruining a good character. When the Godfather was transformed into the Good Father, you take away everything that is over about the character, and you just make him this censored character, part of the Right to Censor group, and instantly nobody cares about him anymore. You already have Stevie Richards doing the censorship gimmick. Why do you have to have an over character doing this gimmick and make him not over? It was just completely idiotic, and Godfather never really gained his momentum back after that. And let's look at some recent flops. Tensai. Tensai, formerly A-Train in WWE, made his comeback after being in Japan for several years. He had this new Japanese gimmick, and it looked like it had potential, but after a couple of weeks, people just weren't reacting to him, and in fact, people were chanting A-Train at him on almost a weekly basis, and everybody knew he was A-Train, and the character just didn't catch on at all. I mean, it was definitely a huge flop, and now they have him as part of a tag team with Brodus Clay, and they've already given up on him. I don't even know why they brought him back if they were just gonna give up on him after a couple weeks. But yeah, the character just did not catch on in 2012 WWE. And a couple more names here. Seven. This was actually, I thought it was going to be an interesting character. They were showing clips from it. This is from WCW. This mysterious character, kind of like The Undertaker in a way. And I thought the vignettes were actually really cool. And I was like kind of interested, like, what's this character going to be like? And then he makes his big debut. He comes down from the rafters all the way down to the ring. This really spectacular entrance. You say, wow, this is really cool. And all of a sudden he gets on the mic and says that he's Dustin Rhodes, and they gave him this stupid gimmick where he has to be Uncle Fester playing Trick or Treat year round, and just like that, the character was dropped. So all the hype to just end the character and then do a little work to shoot promo, and it sucked. Two more I want to mention today. First off, a guy who took ECW by storm for a couple of weeks in 2008, Braden Walker. Future Hall of Famer Braden Walker. Poor guy. He was Chris Harris in TNA and had a great run as part of America's Most Wanted. He went to WWE hoping for a great opportunity, and he was there for a cup of coffee, and then he was gone. Part of it was his fault. He wasn't in the best shape, but I mean, what a stupid name. First of all, Braden Walker. They couldn't let him just be Chris Harris. They have to own the trademark to every character. It was a dumb name that had no potential, and it was a very short run for him. But he did have a 3-disc DVD set, which you can buy somewhere. I don't know where, but awesome DVD. You have to check it out. And finally, the biggest character fail of all time, the biggest flop of all time is, of course, the Flair flop, but I'm talking about actual character flops, failed character experiments. The number one worst character and the biggest flop of all time is the guy that tried to shock the wrestling world, the Shockmaster. He comes out wearing this Space Invaders helmet or some crappy glitter helmet. I mean, the costume was ridiculous, and then of course he has to ruin everything by tripping through the wall during his entrance, and that was the end of poor Shockmaster. Very brief run, basically just a trip. That was his career. So there you have it, some of the biggest character flops in wrestling history. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Talk about some of the names I didn't mention. Like I said, there's so many of them. I could go on for hours talking about them, but I'm not going to do that. Leave a comment, youtube.com/NoDQCAW, and stay tuned to NoDQ.com for all the very latest in WWE and TNA. Thanks for watching.